The sky wasn't just dark, it was angry. Rain hammered the airstrip like arrows piercing the earth. The Navy SEALs huddled together near their broken helicopter. Their radios were silent. Their faces told the truth. They were stranded. No backup. No way out. And then, through the wall of rain, a sound, a deep rolling thunder that wasn't from the storm. Engines, massive engines. Out of the clouds, a shadow appeared. The beast of the skies, a C-130 Hercules, but this wasn't just any flight. In the cockpit sat a young woman, Captain Elena Ward. Eyes locked forward, hands steady on controls that most pilots would never dare touch in weather like this. She wasn't just flying. She was rewriting the rules of survival. Have you ever seen someone turn impossible into the only plan that could save lives? That's exactly what was about to happen. Elena Ward, 5'6" in her flight boots. But when she stepped into a cockpit, she carried the presence of a giant. At 32, she had lived a lifetime in the skies. Her calm wasn't normal. It was the kind that comes from making split-second choices at 30,000 feet. Choices where one heartbeat of hesitation could mean the difference between life and disaster. Her green eyes had seen too much, calculated too many impossible scenarios, and somehow always found a way to win. Her uniform looked ordinary, standard. Patches, standard suit. Nothing that revealed the secret missions she had flown, the boundaries she had broken, the legends she had already written in the clouds. Elena grew up in the shadow of Edwards Air Force Base, where the roar of jets wasn't just noise, it was lullabies, it was alarm clocks, it was life itself. Her father, a test pilot. Her mother, an aerospace engineer. Flight wasn't just in her blood, it was her language. And the C-130, that wasn't just a machine to her. It was a partner, a workhorse of war, rough, relentless, reliable. While sleek fighter jets stole the spotlight, Elena chose the Hercules because she knew sometimes the unglamorous machine is the one that saves lives. She had flown over 3,000 hours in it, through deserts, through storms, into fire, and out again with the wounded. But behind her calm confidence lay scars. From one mission that had nearly ended everything, 18 months earlier, Afghanistan Operation Silent Thunder. Elena had been the lead pilot. 48 wounded soldiers trapped on a mountainside. Enemy fire closing in. No airstrip, no options, except the impossible one. She put her C-130 down on a strip that no manual even recognized as landable. Every soldier survived that night, every single one. The military called it a success. Her commanders called it a miracle, but her body told another story. The landing destroyed her aircraft, and nearly destroyed her. 4 months in military hospitals. Surgeries, pain, doubts. Most people would have walked away from the skies forever. But not Elena Ward. She came back. Not to glory, not to hero missions. She asked for quieter assignments, safer flights, transport duty. At least that's what the papers said. But Elena, she knew the truth. The storm was coming. And she suspected, when it hit, only her skills would matter. And she was right. Dramatic pause. That night on the coast, the storm didn't arrive slowly. It attacked, winds over 90 miles an hour, rain that felt like bullets. The main runway swallowed under 3 feet of ocean water. Helicopters? Useless. Rescue? Impossible. The base commander made it clear. No one's leaving. Not tonight. Not tomorrow. Maybe not for days. The SEALs shifted uncomfortably. Men who thrived on action, now trapped, helpless. But Elena didn't just see chaos. She saw numbers. She saw patterns in the storm. She saw a plan. Her eyes locked on the auxiliary runway, partially flooded, unusable to most pilots. To her, maybe the only chance. The storm raged on. Lightning cracked across the sky. Each strike lit up the base like a battlefield. Inside the operations, center chaos ruled. Radios buzzed, maps were useless, and every standard plan had already failed. Lieutenant Commander Jake Morrison paced like a caged lion, a man trained for war, suddenly powerless. How long until we can fly? He demanded. Minimum 48 hours, the meteorologist answered. Maybe longer, if the storm stalls. 48 hours. For SEALs, that was eternity. Their missions lived on precision, timing, and swift exits. Being stranded. That wasn't part of their DNA. Their eyes flicked toward Eleanor Ward, the transport pilot, the one they didn't take seriously, the one who was supposed to just fly. Cargo. But Elena wasn't watching them. She was watching the storm, studying its rhythm, its heartbeat. She noticed something no one else dared look for. The auxiliary runway, flooded, broken, but maybe, just maybe, as not impossible. She whispered the thought to herself, then louder, so the room could hear. It might still be usable. The heads in the room turned. Morrison frowned. You're talking about landing a C-130 on a lake. Elena's voice was steady. No, I'm talking about survival. C-130s are built for rough fields. With calculations, right calculations, this can be done. Her words cut through the storm louder than thunder. Everyone stared. Some saw madness, but Morrison saw something else. Conviction. You're serious? He asked. Elena's green eyes locked onto his. I'm serious about bringing your men home alive, the base commander shook his head. Captain Ward, this has never been attempted. Not in these conditions. Not anywhere. Elena leaned closer to the satellite data. Her finger traced numbers, currents, depths. Her mind wasn't guessing, it was solving. Water depth is between 18 and 24 inches. Runway length 6,000 feet. If I hit the right speed, right angle, and adjust for hydroplaning, the Hercules will hold. Her voice wasn't dramatic, it wasn't cocky. It was mathematical, cold, sharp, exact. And it silenced the room. Finally, Morrison exhaled. What do you need? Eleanor was already moving, charts open, manuals spread, her hands a blur of precision. I need exact water depth at every 50 feet. Wind direction every 10 minutes, real-time updates from the ground team. Morrison raised an eyebrow. You've never done this before. She didn't flinch. No one has, but that doesn't mean it can't be done. The SEALs exchanged glances. They lived in a world where failure wasn't an option. And now, they were staring at someone who thought the same way. Elena continued calmly. I'll need your team along the runway during approach, not as crew, as my eyes. If I'm too fast, too low, too high, you'll see it before I do. Morrison nodded slowly. For the first time since the storm hit, he smiled. What are our chances? He asked. Elena paused. Her eyes scanned the chart one last time. Her voice dropped to a whisper. If everything goes perfectly, 70%. And if it doesn't? Morrison asked. Elena looked him dead in the eye. Then we find out if a C-130 can float. For the first time in hours, the SEALs laughed. Not because it was funny, but because someone had just given them hope. Dawn arrived, but the storm hadn't weakened. If anything, it had grown stronger. Winds howled across the base like screaming banshees. Rain hammered the hangars. The sea swallowed more of the shoreline with every wave, and yet, inside the hangar, Eleanor stood calm. Beside her, C-130, her warhorse, her partner. She stripped weight from the aircraft, removed every unnecessary item, calculated fuel to the exact drop, even reduced her crew, just her and her flight engineer, Rodriguez. Ma'am, Rodriguez said carefully, the gusts are hitting 40 knots, changing direction every 90 seconds. Elena nodded. Then 90 seconds is my window, her. Calm was terrifying and inspiring. Outside, the SEALs took positions along the flooded runway, their boots sinking into water, eyes sharp, radios ready. For once, their mission wasn't combat. It was survival. Inside the cockpit, Elena tightened her harness. Her hands moved across controls with precision. The engines roared to life, their thunder matching the storm. She radioed tower. Hercules 77, requesting clearance for emergency extraction. The voice came back nervous. Hercules 77, be advised, runway is underwater. Clearance at your own discretion. Elena allowed herself the faintest smile. At my discretion, she repeated softly. Exactly where she belonged. The C-130 rolled, Forward. A giant against the storm. This was no longer theory, no longer calculation. This was execution. The sky was black. The ocean roared like a monster. And on that flooded strip of concrete, a single plan was in motion. The SEALs stood ready, spread along the auxiliary runway. Water lapped around their boots. Their radios crackled with static. They weren't armed for battle tonight. Their mission was different. Watch, report, survive. In the cockpit, Elena tightened her straps. Her hands moved like a surgeon's. Every switch, every lever, exact, measured, perfect. Beside her, Rodriguez scanned the instruments. "Ma'am, wind shear at 40 knots. Gusts unpredictable. One mistake." Elena cut him off softly. One mistake isn't an option. The engines of the Hercules roared louder. 4 propellers slicing through rain like giant blades. The hangar trembled with their power. Even the storm seemed to pause, as if nature itself was waiting to see if she would dare. She radioed the tower. "Hercules 77 beginning emergency approach." The reply came hesitant. "Hercules 77. Conditions unprecedented. Landing clearance at your own risk." Eleanor's lips curved into the smallest smile. "At my risk," she whispered. Always was. The C-130 thundered down the runway, lifted into the sky, and circled back toward its impossible target. From altitude, the runway below looked less like concrete, and more like a mirror of water. A dark lake reflecting storm clouds. Currents rippled across it. Depths shifted with each wave. It wasn't a runway. It was a trap. Rodriguez's voice cracked through the headset. "Surface unstable. Ma'am?" "I recommend abort." But Elena's hands were steady, her eyes unblinking. "No, we're committed." At 800 feet, the wind slammed the aircraft like a hammer. The Hercules dropped. A sudden, violent plunge. The SEALs below looked up, hearts in their throats. Elena fought the controls. Her body moved as if she and the machine were one. Rudder. Throttle. Flaps. Every correction calculated, instinctive, flawless. Morrison's voice crackled through the radio. "Touchdown zone 2 feet deep. Current flowing east to west. 5 knots. Elena processed the data instantly. Her voice calm, even as alarms screamed inside the cockpit. "Copy that, adjusting approach." The runway surged closer. Rain whipped across the windshield, so heavy she could barely see. 10 knots. Too fast for normal landings. But slowing wasn't an option. "Hold it steady, Elena," Rodriguez muttered. The sea. SEALs ducked for cover as the massive aircraft cut through sheets of water, spray blasting into the air like exploding waves. Contact. The wheels slammed into the surface. The impact shook the entire frame. Water exploded upward, blinding the cockpit. For 3 eternal seconds, the Hercules hydroplaned. No traction, no control, only faith. Rodriguez shouted, "We're sliding!" Elena didn't panic. Her voice cut through the chaos. "Reverse thrust, full power, hold the line." The roar of the engines deepened. The aircraft's massive weight broke through the water's grip. The tires dug in. Finally, concrete. But the storm wasn't done. A crosswind slammed the tail. The plane lurched sideways, skidding like a car on ice. "Rudder!" Rodriguez barked. Elena was already there. Her feet pressed hard, her hands adjusting with surgical precision. The Hercules steadied. It clawed forward through the storm. Water cascaded over the windows, turning the cockpit into an underwater tunnel. For the last 1,000 feet, Elena couldn't see a thing. She flew blind, guided only by instruments, by instinct, by trust in herself. And then, silence. The plane slowed. The wheels ground to a halt. The impossible was done. Inside the cockpit, Elena sat still for a moment, her breath steady, her hands calm. She had just accomplished something no manual, no simulation, no commander had ever dared to imagine. Rodriguez finally broke the silence. "Ma'am, I think we just redefined what's possible in a C-130. Elena exhaled slowly, almost a laugh. Sometimes the impossible isn't impossible. It's just waiting. Outside, the SEALs emerged from cover, faces wide-eyed, relief mixed with awe. They had seen skill before. They had seen courage. But nothing like this. In their eyes, the transport, Pilot they had dismissed hours earlier was now something else entirely. Not support, not background, but the reason they were alive. The C-130 sat silent. Engines cooling, storm still raging outside, but inside that hangar, everything had changed. The SEALs moved with quiet efficiency, packing gear, securing equipment, but their eyes kept drifting back to Elena Ward. She wasn't celebrating. She wasn't boasting. She was simply running checklists. Hydraulics normal, engines stable, airframe intact, like she had just landed on a sunny afternoon, not on an ocean disguised as a runway. One of the SEALs stepped forward. Petty Officer Thompson, a man who had seen it all. His voice cracked with respect. "Ma'am, 12 years I've flown in military aircraft. I've never seen anything like what you just did." Elena looked up, her expression calm. "C-130s are designed for rough fields," she said softly. "Today we just pushed those limits." But Thompson shook his head. "No, ma'am, you didn't push the limits. You changed them." The others gathered close. Men who rarely praised anyone, now staring at her like she was something beyond a pilot, something legendary. Martinez, another SEAL, frowned as he studied her uniform. "Captain Ward, that combat airlift badge, it's different, not standard issue." Eleanor's lips curved into the faintest smile. Some missions require different recognition. Morrison, their commander, narrowed his eyes. "Captain, what unit were you with before this?" For a moment, Eleanor hesitated, then answered simply. "Special Operations Command, classified airlift." The words hit like thunder. Even without details, everyone understood. This wasn't just another pilot. This was someone forged in the highest, darkest levels of war. And then Thompson froze. His eyes widened. "Wait, Afghanistan. 18 months ago, Operation Silent Thunder, that was you." The room fell silent. The storm outside, forgotten. Everyone knew the story. The mission where a single pilot landed a C-130 on a mountainside. Where she saved 48 wounded soldiers under enemy fire. The mission every operator whispered about, but few believed could actually be true. "You're the one who saved an entire company," Thompson whispered, almost in awe. Elena's jaw tightened. That mission had many heroes. I just flew the aircraft. But her modesty couldn't erase the truth. They knew now, they understood who was standing in front of them. Morrison stepped forward. The same man who once joked she should leave the real work to the professionals. Now his voice carried only respect. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology." Elena raised a hand gently. "No apology needed. Assumptions are normal. Results matter more." The SEALs exchanged looks. They weren't just looking at a pilot anymore. They were looking at proof. Proof that courage can sit quietly until the moment it's needed most. Hours later, the C-130 lifted off once more. This time not into chaos, but into clearing skies. Sunlight cut through the clouds like golden blades. The storm was over. In the cargo bay, the SEALs finally exhaled, laughs mixed with disbelief, stories already being shaped, stories they would tell for the rest of their careers. Morrison walked to the cockpit. Eleanor was focused on her instruments. Calm, professional, as if nothing extraordinary had happened. "Captain," he said quietly, "my team will tell this story for years. The day a transport pilot landed a C-130 on a flooded runway and made it look routine." For the first time, Elena allowed herself a real smile. "Just make sure you tell it right. Not just about the landing, but about the preparation, the calculation. Because anyone can take risks. Success comes from planning." Morrison nodded, because he understood. This wasn't just bravery, it was brilliance. Months later, Eleanor stood in a classroom, test pilot school, teaching future aviators what had once been thought impossible. Flooded runway procedures, she began, clicking through slides of her mission. Once considered theory, now proven. A young student raised her hand. "Ma'am, how do you find the courage to do something no one has ever done before?" Eleanor paused. Her eyes softened. "Courage isn't about not being afraid," she said quietly. "It's about deciding the people counting on you are more important than your fear. The room fell silent. Every student knew they weren't just hearing a lecture, they were hearing truth.